Welcome back to News Talk. What a night at Verizon. The Caps taking game one of their round two NHL playoff series with the Pittsburgh Penguins downtown. The home team getting an overtime goal from TJ Oshie to win 4-3, taking a 1-0 lead in the best-of-7 series. Washington Post sports reporter Matt Bonesteel joins us now from the paper's newsroom downtown. Matt, great to have you with us. With so much going on, it is terrific to have you aboard. Let's talk about the Caps' 4-3 win and that amazing performance by TJ Oshie, one of the players brought in to help the team not just during the regular season, but here in the postseason, where the hopes and to a certain extent the expectations for Washington are very high. A 1-0 lead is a good start against a big rival like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Oshie was brought in because he's shown the ability to do it in the postseason before, and they wanted more players who had done that. You know, with the Caps' postseason history, as everyone knows and as everyone has heard by now, has been pretty sad. So now they have some guys who have shown they can get it done, and Oshie did it last night with 3 goals. It was amazing.
The Flyers series was really tight. It was low scoring. There was a period during last night's game where the goals were coming in quick succession. I mean, it was 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, ultimately tied 3-0, and then into overtime with Oshie providing the decider. This was a really well played, tense, enjoyable game. More so, of course, if you're a Washington fan than if you're rooting for the Pens. I mean, it struck me that there was quite a contrast here from a style perspective compared to the series that they just came out of.
Yeah, it's going to be a completely different series. The Flyers would much rather just grind it out and score 1 goal and win 1-0 and, you know, try to just keep you off the board. The Penguins will run and will go fast, and the Caps did a good job of keeping up with them. As my colleague Dan Steinberg said in his column today, the first series against the Flyers was like a boxing match. The second one is going to be more like a track meet, so the Caps really have to adjust, and that's something they've done poorly in the past. In the playoffs, they can't adjust, but this year so far so good this year.
And you got a sense that whether it's the impact of Barry Trotz or simply the makeup of the team, that while it was wild and woolly there for a while, Washington kind of kept things medium and never sort of lost their cool or got discombobulated by the frantic pace of play and the fear that they could lose game 1 at home and kind of fritter away their home ice advantage early.
Yeah, no, all those goals. There were 3 goals in a 90-second span, which is pretty incredible for an NHL game, much less an NHL playoff game. So, no, they kept their heads. They didn't let it affect them all too much. They played their game, and in the end, Oshie was able to win it for them with three pretty great goals.
Let's pivot and talk about the NFL draft for a moment. Washington taking a wide receiver from TCU who racked up some good numbers. I guess this is a recognition of the fact that some of the receivers who are on the team now for salary cap reasons or others might not be around much longer. Talk about Josh Doctson and what he brings. Was it a surprise that he was the team's round 1 pick?
It was a bit of a surprise because the opinion was that the Redskins needed a center and they needed some help on the defensive line. But so for them going out and taking a wide receiver, it was a sign that they were really wanting to take the best player available, and that's who they thought it was. Doxson's a tall guy. He's 6'2", and he's said to have great hands. So that will be important, especially with Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson entering the final years of their contracts. And they're both, getting up there in age. So to get some new blood on the wide receivers is a big move for the Redskins.
Do you have a gut sense, at least in terms of position, if not individual, as what is now a marathon NFL draft continues into Friday night and the weekend? Do you have a feel for the positions most likely to be kind of front of mind for the team as they consider who's best at the slot where they pick?
Oh, I think it's probably going to be defensive line tonight with the 2nd and 3rd rounds. The feeling was that there were a lot of defensive linemen still available to be picked, which gave them the freedom to pick Doctson at wide receiver. So I think on the lines, especially at defensive line and at center, where they might have some holes to fill.
Are you struck at all by the sort of quarterback mania that has that dominated the run-up to this year's draft? everyone was saying this is not a classically great year for quarterback prospects, and yet all the chatter, all the blogs, all the endless discussion on cable is about the quarterbacks deemed to be the best, even if they're not. You know, I don't think we're looking at any Brett Favre's or John Elway's in this group. Maybe it's where the league is right now, the perception that you can't win without a good quarterback, and there just aren't that many great quarterbacks in the league right now, so everyone's looking for that savior to come in and, if not start right away, then certainly be an impact player in the not too distant future. I was struck by almost how crazy all the chatter was, to the extent that even matters. But leading into the draft, this was a quarterback-dominated discussion, even though the prospects here are okay, but not mind-blowing.
They are. Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. No one thinks they're going to come in and be Aaron Rodgers, at least right away. But when you look back at all the teams that have won the Super Bowl, I mean, you can't find one that didn't have a great quarterback. Yet maybe even go back to when the Ravens won with Trent Dilfer, who wasn't a mind-blowing quarterback by any means, but they had a great defense to make up for that. Since then, it's been teams with all good quarterbacks who have won, and I think general managers know this, and they're very hidebound people. So they know, that we need a quarterback to win in this league, and that's what the Eagles did to move up in the draft. They needed to get a quarterback because Sam Bradford has never gotten it done, and maybe they think he never will.
Quite a drama playing out in Philadelphia, worth talking about for a second, because the Eagles are, of course, a division rival. Bradford's so angry when he was told that the Eagles, who have paid a very steep price in terms of draft picks to be able to move up, I guess, to the Cleveland position, number 2, right, to be able to make the pick that they made. Bradford leaving the voluntary camp that is on, and now, according to ESPN's Sal Paolantonio, not responding to calls or text messages from the club's coach or general manager.
Yeah, I'm sure they have nothing to talk about on Philadelphia Sports Talk Radio this morning. Yeah, it's just a mess. And, Bradford has never been anyone's idea of a great starting quarterback. And maybe he thinks his opinion of himself is higher than the Eagles' opinion of him. But at the same time, they probably don't want to start Wentz right away. So they actually need Bradford in there to get started, to start. Maybe play a season or two under his wing, and then give it over to Wentz, and then they can do whatever they want with Bradford. But, there's really not a whole lot Bradford can do other than say, I don't want to do that. So.
And if he does get traded, it'll be fascinating to see where he goes. Denver, amazingly, is the defending Super Bowl champion and a team without a quarterback. And, of course, Cleveland's situation, which many of us in Washington are going to watch with great interest next season, this coming year. Presumably, even with Robert Griffin III on board, they still need someone at that position. I think Bradford would be an upgrade. So, again, we're watching this because it's a division rival. It'll be fascinating to see, does Bradford get the trade he seems to want?
Yeah, with the Broncos taking Paxton Lynch last night, it really eliminated them from taking either trading for Bradford or Colin Kaepernick of the 49ers, another quarterback who wants out. So I think the teams feel like they can do this via the draft and do it a lot cheaper, and hopefully, get a winning lottery ticket with one of these guys instead of trading for someone who hasn't really proven anything in many years in the NFL.
I'm old school. I'm old enough to remember when rookies sat, watched, and learned. I can't help but believe that even in the league now, things having changed obviously quite a bit, I still think having rookies play is not in their or the team's long-term best interest. If they can sit, adjust to the game, and learn before being thrown into the fire, I think it benefits all. Let's talk, Matt, though, for a couple minutes that we have left about the Nats. Very tough road trip coming up, 10 games against 3 really good teams, and they just got swept by the Phillies at home. Your thoughts?
Well, they only scored 3 runs, and that's the problem. Apart from Bryce Harper and Daniel Murphy, no one's hitting. I mean, Jason Worth, I think, has 20 strikeouts and 61 at-bats, which is not going to do anyone any well, and Rendon and Ryan Zimmerman aren't hitting either, and everyone thought the hitting wasn't going to be the problem this year, but apparently it is. And 3 runs in 3 games against the Phillies, I mean, that's not going to get anything done. And now they have to go out and play the Cubs, the Royals, and the Cardinals, which, those 3 teams are a lot better than the Phillies are, that's for sure.
So you've got 10 games on the road against 3 of baseball's best. The good news is, as Dusty Baker says, if you had told me 21 games ago, in other words, at the beginning of the season, that we would be 14 up, 7 down at this point, that's a great record. but this next 10-game stretch is going to be worth watching. Can they get some wins before they're back at home?
Yeah, they need to stay afloat here. Those 14 wins came against some of the league's worst teams, and now they're going to play some of the best. And not only the road trip against tough teams, I believe they have games in the next 30 days without a break. So it's going to be the grind starts now, and it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be able to hold up and keep up in the NL East.
Clearly, the bats have to wake up, and sooner the sooner that happens, the better it'll be.
Right.
Matt Bonesteel, a sports reporter for the Washington Post, joining us from the paper's newsroom downtown. A lot going on with the Caps win. They'll play Game 2 this weekend. The NFL draft continuing this weekend. The Nats hitting the road for a long and difficult stretch, coming off 3 losses at home to the Phillies. Matt, thank you very much for your time. Good to have you here again.
Thank you.
We'll step aside, back with more News Talk here on News Channel 8 right after this.